"I am not convinced schools should ever have closed," Dwyer told Insider. "Given what we know about relative vulnerability to the coronavirus, the shutdown decision arguably amounted to a prioritizing of the welfare of certain adults over the welfare of children." Obviously, yes, child abuse is a problem. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. However, we can't get mad that it potentially is happening more when we haven't even fixed the system that we have in place. It's not catching enough of existing cases to even worry about that yet. You have to start with step one, in my opinion. The other thing that bothers me about this is that he says the shutdown decision arguably amounted to a prioritizing of the welfare of certain adults over the welfare of children. First of all, while children have not shown symptoms of coronavirus as often as the adults have, children of all ages, from infant to young adult, they can catch it even if it's not common. The other problem is, even if they don't catch it, they never show symptoms of it, they can carry it. And if for some reason they do get the coronavirus, they can suffer from more complications. And many teachers that we have are in those categories that count as vulnerable. So if you lose those teachers to coronavirus, you don't have a school system in place. So yes, to a degree, you have to prioritize the adults. If you don't prioritize the adults, you're not going to have anybody in that classroom anyways. And when you don't have enough teachers, when you don't have enough staff, the school itself is going to suffer, and therefore that means the children are going to suffer. It's not as simple as, oh, students can't catch it, so why are we closing schools? You do have to consider the adults. Let's just say, for example, you have a teaching team of 12 teachers. I think that's the biggest teaching team I've seen. 12 kindergarten teachers, and they're in little teams of 4. So you have 3 teams of kindergarten, 4 teachers per team. And one of those teachers just so happens to be in that high age range, over 60, hasn't retired yet, catches the coronavirus because schools haven't been shut down. So now those students in that class, they either have to find a sub for that class, which is surprisingly difficult in the school system. If they can't find a sub, they end up splitting that class. So now you have the other 3 classes on that team with an extra 4 or 5 kids, or you have every class in kindergarten with an extra 2 kids. All of those kids have been exposed because they've been around their teacher who just went out sick. So those students could potentially expose all of the other kids and all of the 11 teachers in that room. Not considering that the 3 teachers on that immediate team were already exposed by being around the teacher who went out. So if one of those teachers gets sick, you're going to pull out that teacher. You're going to have more students who have to be divided among classes. The more students you have in a classroom, the less they're learning. It doesn't seem like it would affect it much, but it does. It trickles down eventually, and you're just not getting the same learning experience as you would if you had your typical classes, typical teachers. And you cannot rely on substitutes to be able to come in. Not to mention those surfaces haven't been sanitized. There's a lot to consider more than just, oh, kids can't catch it. So that's where this article really comes off as just kind of blind to what the school system is like. I haven't read this part. Dwyer was referring to the fact that children are less likely than adults to develop the coronavirus and are also likely to have a low transmission rate in the classroom. He said that he thinks schools should reopen as soon as possible. Just like with every other large social gathering place, because school is in essence a social gathering, it's going to spread faster, it's going to spread more. And those children, those teachers are going to go out and they're going to do their regular lives after they've been done at school, and that's how it spreads. So yes, it does have to be treated just like any other social gathering place. You have to tackle it because yes, there's a lot of students, but there's also a lot of adults there. In 2019, long before parents were compelled to turn into teachers essentially overnight, Dwyer co-authored Homeschooling, the History and Philosophy of a Controversial Practice. In the book, Dwyer argues that homeschooling requires more regulation to ensure the safety and appropriate development of children. For example, Dwyer pushes for background checks on all members of a household to help protect children from abuse. He also calls for the parents who are homeschooling to have a basic education themselves and for more frequent evaluations of a student's academic progress. Now, yes, I agree with all of that. I've heard stories of people going into houses of homeschooling. The children aren't learning. The parents are pushing certain aspects of curriculum that may not be appropriate. Oftentimes it's a way for highly religious families to get away with only teaching the Bible or teaching their religious philosophy by working on other academic subjects for 5 or 10 minutes a day, but mainly focusing on the religious topics. So yes, I do believe that if you're going to homeschool, there has to be a better way to do it, even if it's something like treating a homeschooling scenario like a home daycare type situation where you know that the homeschool teacher has the degree, has the ability to deliver the content at a high quality level. It's hard when you don't have that in place, and people have varying reasons for wanting to homeschool. So I do agree that that is a tough issue. And for that purpose, that's really where a lot of debate comes in homeschooling. Is it appropriate, given that you cannot evaluate the teachers in the supposed school system, you can't evaluate the parents, and you can't evaluate the progress? That's a big issue. So with that point, I do agree. I'm not going to read any further. I will put the link in the description if you would like to read it. It is a very long article. It gets into more of the scientific data as well as some of the mathematical data. I'm not going to read the whole article. I will leave the description down below if you would like to check it out and read it. My overall thoughts on this Think Aloud read through of this article, though I do agree that some of his points are valid, I just think that he's not taking into account the whole picture. Yes, you want to prevent abuse, you want to make sure those situations are avoided and that you can protect the kids who are in those situations. However, not acknowledging that the coronavirus is a problem and could be a problem for schools as a whole is kind of blindsided to what actually goes on in educational facilities. So those are my thoughts on this article. Definitely an interesting read. There were certain opinions that he voiced that kind of, in my opinion, pulled away from his main argument, mainly the argument that closing schools was only taking into account the teachers. More than just that was taken into account. Not to mention, you cannot forget that every student has parents, and those parents are interacting in the school as well. Maybe not to the same degree as the teachers and staff are, but they are interacting. And to keep them out entirely causes some problems as well. So there's a lot more to consider here than just where the kids are not likely to catch it. So those are my thoughts on this article. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. If you'd like to leave a comment down below, I will be looking for those. I hope you enjoyed this Think Aloud. Let me know if there's anything you would like me to think aloud with, and I will see you guys next time.